Don't you see? It's okay. I did it. I couldn't save him. Uncle Ben. I couldn't save him, no matter what I did. But I saved you. I did it. I did. Today on the Comic Book Report, Ultimate Spider-Man, Death of Spider-Man Omnibus. Stick around and check it out. Greetings, webheads. My name is Dominic, and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I'm back in the world of Spider-Man doing another Marvel Omnibus review for our favorite wall crawler. Yes, this is Ultimate Spider-Man, Death of Spider-Man Omnibus, and this is the 2024 reprint. I'm really excited to talk about this event Omnibus, but before we do, I'd like to shout out and say a thank you to our channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you want to pick up your own comic book collected editions, perhaps even a copy of this omnibus, be sure to check them out. You can find a link to Organic Price Books in this video's description, and if you see anything there you like, you can even use my discount code at checkout, The Comic Book Report, to save $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's probably the best way to support this channel. Thank you so much for considering. Now let's get started with today's Spider-Man Omnibus review. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written primarily by Brian Michael Bendis and Mark Millar, and penciled primarily by Sara Pichelli, Mark Bagley, and Leinil Francis You. The comics in this volume were published by Marvel Comics beginning in 2010. As far as what this edition collects, the volume includes Ultimate Comics Spider-Man issues 15, 150 through 160, Ultimate Comics Avengers vs. New Ultimates issues 1 through 6, and Ultimate Comics Fallout issues 1 through 6. And finally, this is an oversized hardcover edition with glossy print paper stock, a sewn binding, and a total of 608 pages. At this time, I'd like to issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our front cover for this omnibus. We have a field of white. We do have the title, The Ultimate Spider-Man, Death of Spider-Man. We have some of the creators included on this dust jacket, as well as just a picture of Uncle Ben kind of having his arm around Peter Parker's Spider-Man. A really beautiful and evocative cover, but it doesn't have a ton of bells and whistles. As we get to the spine of this book, we do have the Marvel Omnibus logo, a field of black with again the Ultimate Spider-Man, Death of Spider-Man title, some of the creators, and a little image of Spider-Man on the bottom. I do really like the spine design overall. I think it looks really striking on the bookcase, and overall really well done here as far as I'm concerned. Now, as we go ahead and crest and transition onto the back cover of the dust jacket, we have a brief kind of little blurb about the book, along with the thumbnailed covers of all the issues that are included in this omnibus, along with pricing information, the kind of parental reading level, I think it's a T+, along with the kind of written out what it collects in the book. Overall, this is a pretty straightforward back of dust jacket. I am always a fan of the thumbnailed covers, just so you can see everything at a glance, what's included in the book. Overall, pretty nicely done here. And speaking of at a glance, I will do one final minute here doing the book's exteriors. We're going to look at that dust jacket one more time. This time I'll also show you the interior flaps of the dust jacket, and I'll go ahead and spread it all out so you can see it all. Again, this dust jacket for me, it works. I think the spine is the high point. I really do like the spine design. The rest is okay. No real bells or whistles. Nothing that really drew me to it too much. But overall, I still think it's a pretty fine dust jacket. Under the dust jacket, though, things do get a bit more interesting. I will admit I wasn't totally sure what was going to be printed on the hardback book itself, and we have basically a cast of the Ultimates, like we have Thor and Iron Man, Captain America, we have the Scarlet Witch, and we even have Spider-Man thrown in here. It's predominantly a red book with this kind of bluish sort of pencil work here. Really an interesting and evocative under the dust jacket print here. I wasn't sure again what they would put here, but I think what they decided on was definitely pretty captivating. I have no complaints here. Overall, a pretty good hardback design. And now for all you prospective collectors out there, for those interested, a quick look at this book's binding. So as I mentioned, this is a sewn binding as far as I can tell. I didn't really have issues with the binding per se, but you'll notice there isn't much of an eye. This is actually after I've read this book through once, cover to cover. We do have a little bit of gutter loss here, nothing too critical though, but just something that should be noted. I think for such a small collection, I think I hoped it laid down flat a bit more. Okay, now that we've gone over the exteriors and the build of the book, let's go ahead and dive into the omnibus itself. After a set of red end pages, we do have a title publication page, followed by a creator breakdown page, which is nice to see, and they even threw in a previously on Ultimate Spider-Man page. I think this is really nice for those that need to maybe freshen up on what happened in this series prior to this book, or if you're trying to read it standalone as an event omnibus, again, it's a great way to kind of catch up with what came before. After that, we do jump into Ultimate Comics Spider-Man issue 15. I will talk a little bit right now about the mapping of this omnibus for those interested. I did already go over the contents, but essentially how it's broken down is we begin the omnibus with that Ultimate Comics Spider-Man issue 15 before we revert to the kind of Ultimate Spider-Man legacy numbering with issues 150 onward. But before we get to 160, before we even get through, I think, 156, somewhere around 155, give or take, we ultimately take a stop from Ultimate Spider-Man and jump into that kind of Ultimates, Avengers little mini-series that goes on for 6 issues. After that point, we do jump back into Ultimate Spider-Man or Ultimate Comics Spider-Man. We finish out the run up to issue 160, which is the end of that proper series, and then this omnibus caps off with Ultimate Fallout, which is another 6-issue miniseries. And that is how this book is broken down. So we have the Ultimate Spider-Man issues, right in the middle of that we have the Ultimates Avengers issues, back to Ultimate Spider-Man, and capping off with Fallout. After that we have some extras at the back of the book, which I'll be sure to cover at the end of this video, and that is really this omnibus. The only other general notes I'd like to make about this collection is, again, this is a reprint. This is the 2024 edition of this omnibus. The only other note I will say is I have heard that Marvel is supposedly making an Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 5 omnibus. I'm really not sure what would be collected in that, as this omnibus does include the last 10 issues, 11 issues of that Ultimate Spider-Man series, so you have all the main issues collected in here. But I'm not sure if that Volume 5 would have a different mapping, if it would take things out, if it would add different miniseries, so I guess we'll have to stay tuned for that. But Marvel does classify this as an event omnibus. So that's my only other note. Let's go ahead and talk about the book itself. So this begins with Ultimate Comics Spider-Man 15. At one point in this Brian Michael Bendis run, they did renumber from an issue 1. They got a new artist. I'm not sure if this was Sara Pichelli. I'll have to go back and look at my Volume 4. But we also have a whole new setup where basically the Human Torch and Iceman move in with Peter Parker, Aunt May, and Gwen Stacy, and they get into all sorts of other antics. So this is issue 15, which is the last of that numbering before we restore the legacy numbering with issue 150. Now, the beginning of this omnibus is kind of interesting because this really just picks up where Volume 4 leaves off. We have Spider-Man kind of caught in this love triangle with Gwen Stacy and a bit with Mary Jane, or it's at least kind of an awkward love triangle at this point. We still have him friends and roommates with Human Torch and Iceman, but we definitely have a changing of the guard here. We only go that one issue before we go back to the legacy numbering, and we do kind of kick into a whole new storyline. We have the Black Cat, Felicia Hardy, seeming to want to assassinate the Kingpin before Kingpin is taken out by none other than Mysterio. This is a really interesting storyline as well. It really does focus on Black Cat and Mysterio, and Spider-Man just kind of gets involved at one point in the story arc. Basically, they're fighting over something in Kingpin's vault that ends up being this artifact from, I think, Egypt that sort of gives you monkey paw-like wishes, and it's capable of just unbelievable destructive power. I thought that this was a really fun little story arc. Again, it's been a while since I've read some of the previous Ultimate Spider-Man collections. I still haven't made my way through my Volume 4. I read some of those issues just when I read through the series the first time, so I'm a bit hazy on some of the details, so this was a fun way to kind of jump back into this world. And again, it kind of sets the stage for you. You get to know some of these characters. We have sort of the return of Gwen Stacy. We actually have Gwen Stacy breaking up with Peter in this issue, or in these couple issues right at the beginning of the book. And frankly, it's not before too long that Peter Parker is back in the arms of Mary Jane Watson, his one true love. I really did love seeing that, and this is where we have an interesting pivot in this omnibus where we jump from those Ultimate Comics Spider-Man or Ultimate Spider-Man issues directly into that Ultimates versus Avengers miniseries. And this is where the omnibus gets a little bit interesting. I think it gets a little bit unfocused because for all intents and purposes, this 6-issue miniseries is maybe not 100% necessary in an Ultimate Spider-Man reading order, save for one very key event that happens right in the middle of the miniseries. So this miniseries is written by Mark Millar, who I enjoyed from numerous titles, including the Ultimates with Brian Hitch at the beginning of the Marvel Ultimates universe as well. But this was a miniseries I never had the opportunity to read, and overall I had fun with it. It basically has a Nick Fury versus Carol Danvers superhero team battle. We have basically Carol Danvers with the mainstay legacy Ultimates or Avengers team like Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Giant Man, things like that. I think Black Widow's on that team. And then we have Nick Fury assembling his new team of heroes, air quotes. We have characters like the Punisher and Blade and Hawkeye and War Machine, and it's just a really ragtag kind of scruffy sort of group. But this is a really fun matchup. Basically, both Nick Fury and Carol Danvers are convinced that the other one is a treacherous spy, so they build up these teams and they're going to go to war with each other. And throughout this miniseries, we find a lot of twists and turns. There's some fun spycraft, geopolitics, and a lot of just super heroic kind of battles. The art in this section is quite beautiful as well, at least in my opinion, but why this is really included in this omnibus is something that happens right around the middle, where basically Spider-Man takes a bullet for Captain America as Punisher tries to shoot him through the kneecaps and incapacitate him. We just have Spider-Man jump into the fray and take those bullets for Captain America. The bullet goes straight through, but definitely leaves Spider-Man gravely injured. But after Spider-Man's hit, we ultimately kind of drop him for most of the rest of this miniseries, except for in the end of the miniseries, they do mention that Spider-Man has been murdered. And this is really interesting as far as the mapping of this miniseries in the place of the omnibus, because after that Ultimates Avengers miniseries is over, we go back to the Ultimate Spider-Man issues and finish out the run up through issue 160, which is the end of that series proper. And when we go back to the Ultimate Spider-Man issues, they kind of occur during that other miniseries, so we have a couple issues kind of leading into when Spider-Man gets shot, and then we have the aftermath afterwards, which ultimately lead to the actual death, which I'll speak to in a minute. Going back to that Ultimates versus Avengers storyline, though, if you're interested, it is a really fun miniseries overall. I'm not sure how essential it is, again, but it was fun for me. I had never read this. I do enjoy Mark Millar's writing here and there, and this was definitely fun. I just think it feels like it takes away a little bit from the pacing and everything else going on with Spider-Man. But yeah, ultimately you find out who was behind it all, who was behind this scheme for the Ultimates and the Avengers, and it was actually Tony Stark's brother. This leads to a final confrontation, and overall that story I think was resolved pretty well. Once we go back to Ultimate Spider-Man, though, things really begin to heat up. We have a really interesting interaction between Spider-Man and Captain America, where the heroes and the Ultimates kind of vote to train Spider-Man. Some think he's already a hero and doesn't really need it, and some just think he should be just a school kid and not be allowed to be Spider-Man at all. Captain America is definitely one that's not in favor of Spider-Man being a hero, believing him to be too immature and not being able to handle the rigor of what's happening here. And of course, we have Spider-Man taking a bullet for Captain America, and that happens not too long afterwards, so he's definitely eating his words a bit. While all this is also happening, we have a breakout scene where we have Norman Osborn, the original Green Goblin. We find him still alive and more manic and wild than ever. He stages sort of a jailbreak, and he releases the rest of essentially a Sinister Six kind of situation, and all of these Spider-Man rogues gallery of villains are set loose on New York, and Green Goblin wants revenge. We do have a really cool breakdown that just follows the Sinister Six characters. We have Otto Octavius, Doc Ock, trying to get out of that villain life and just go back to science, because he considers himself a scientist. But Norman Osborn really won't let that happen. They get into a fight, and it just ends pretty intense. Really a brutal scene, and I like that there's infighting even within the villains in this universe. But basically, the stage is set. We have Peter Parker, Spider-Man, seeing this conflict going on almost a global scale with the Ultimates. The same time, he sees all of his villains having a prison breakout, and he doesn't know what to attend to first. Again, it's not before too long that he gets shot, but he's also trying to evacuate Aunt May, Gwen Stacy from their home, because Green Goblin knows who he is and knows where he lives. So he's trying to get those people out of there. They leave a message for Human Torch and Iceman, and he's just trying to get everything handled so his loved ones are safe. We do have Iceman and Human Torch not getting the memo until they arrive at home, only to see the villains in their front lawn. We do get them fighting Spider-Man's villains, which I thought was really fun, but we do ultimately have the Sinister Six take out both Human Torch and Iceman, and then we have Peter Parker show up to stop the baddies. And this is really where it all goes down. Again, he's already grievously injured from taking that bullet from the Punisher, and now he has to stop 6 of his arguably most dangerous villains of all time, and he has to do it roughly single-handedly, because both Human Torch and Iceman, again, get kind of incapacitated, and the Ultimates are off doing their own thing. So he has to take them all down while he's wounded, and it's not going well. He gets unmasked, his neighbors are in the street watching this happen, they know who Spider-Man is now. One of the neighbors calls Aunt May, who turns around when he hears that Spider-Man's kind of being beaten to death. It's all really horrible, but ultimately Spider-Man's able to take down most of his other foes, and it really comes down to just the Green Goblin versus Spider-Man. This is really the fight we've always wanted, and it is pretty action-packed. We just see Spider-Man wearing down, but not losing his quips, not losing his humor. He does have his loved ones at the scene, and he's trying to defend them. He's trying to push through. He's trying to stop the Goblin. And when one final kind of explosive moment, we have Spider-Man seeming to take down the Goblin, and we have Spider-Man just at his end. He's not able to make it. And we have his loved ones showing up with Aunt May standing there horrified, and he says the lines I said at the beginning of this video, which was basically, I could never save Uncle Ben, but I was able to save you. Like, I did it. And he's kind of teary-eyed and smiling, looking up at his Aunt May, and then he dies. And Aunt May's there just screaming, like, don't let this happen, not him too. And Gwen Stacy's there hysterical, and Mary Jane's there hysterical, and it's just really awful. And that's really how Ultimate Spider-Man ends with issue 160 for the most part. After that, we do have Ultimate Fallout issues 1 through 6, which goes through kind of the funeral for Spider-Man. We have some really great moments for Aunt May here, where we have Captain America basically saying, it's my fault, I got him shot. Aunt May actually takes a slap at Captain America. It's all pretty gripping. We have a beautiful moment with J. Jonah Jameson as well, who even offered Spider-Man a job earlier in this series as well, because we already know that J. Jonah Jameson knows who he is. Anyway, we have a really good full circle moment with him. We have Mary Jane wanting to find out who was ultimately responsible for killing Spider-Man and like what he was involved in, who shot him, things like that. But really, Fallout has more to do with what happens in the Marvel Ultimate Universe after the death of Spider-Man. And we really jump around a lot. You know, we start pretty centralized to the funeral, and then we kind of expand outward to some of the supporting cast, and then just some unrelated characters. Like, we go through some different X-Men characters, like his ex-girlfriend Kitty Pryde. We go over to Rogue even shows up. We have things with Quicksilver and Wanda. We have an image of the Maker at one point in the Fallout issues. We really just jump all around the place. In Fallout issue 4, we have the origin, or the first appearance rather, of Miles Morales Spider-Man, which takes the reins in the next volume, which is the Miles Morales Spider-Man Omnibus. So all of that's included in those Fallout issues, which is really fun. But this is another miniseries that's really interesting. I think it's definitely more rooted with the Ultimate Spider-Man, but it does also feel a bit unfocused. Some feel so just locked into this Ultimate Spider-Man universe, and some just feel like more like footnotes that are happening around the Marvel universe because of this event. I'm still happy it's included in this omnibus. I think it really helps with the context of the broader universe as a whole, but it just is an interesting little miniseries, and that's really where the omnibus ends. That is, except for the extras, which we have finally arrived at. I will say a lot of the extras in this omnibus are really in the form of a variant cover art gallery, which is in this beautiful oversized format. After that, we do also have some kind of pencils, production, images or artwork, reprints of original artwork for the book. I really did like this portion. It was really cool to see a lot of the pencil work. I think I would have loved to see more essays or kind of afterwards or even reflections on Ultimate Spider-Man. I would have loved to see that included in here, but we still do get this handful of extras, which is quite nice all the same. And after that, we reach those red end pages, and that's really the end of the Ultimate Spider-Man Death of Spider-Man Omnibus. Again, this is the 2024 reprint, and it was really something. An event omnibus, but one I'm really happy I checked out. Some great writing by both Brian Michael Bendis and Mark Millar, and some great artwork throughout. And now I think all that's left to do is to give this omnibus a grade. For successfully sticking the landing of an already incredible Spider-Man comic run, even if some of the miniseries included made this omnibus feel a bit unfocused overall, the Comic Book Report is happy to give Ultimate Spider-Man Death of Spider-Man Omnibus a B. There are some real groundbreaking and essential issues included in this omnibus, and some that feel only loosely connected to the overall vision of where this book was going. This is definitely an event book that does provide context for the greater Ultimate Marvel Universe, even if it's at the cost a bit of the pacing for the central Spider-Man story. The art and writing throughout was all pretty strong, at least in my mind. I was really grateful to have this in my collection. I'm not sure if this is the high point of the entire Ultimate Spider-Man series for me, although those actual Death of Spider-Man issues are absolutely amazing. But that is just one man's opinion. I would love to hear yours. Have you read Death of Ultimate Spider-Man? Have you read this omnibus? Are you planning to pick up a potential Volume 5 should Marvel ever release it? What are your thoughts on Miles Morales? Let me know all those things and more in the comments section, and thank you so much for watching. This has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to leave your like, that comment we talked about, and maybe share this video with a friend. Thanks everyone, and have a good one.